Just gonna record. Hey, let me just check that I am live on Facebook. Oh, look, there I am. Awesome. How's everyone doing? I'm going to try and keep an eye on the Facebook feed, but it is really disconcerting to see myself talking like a few minutes after I've just talked, like a few seconds. I'm exaggerating now, a few seconds after I've just talked. So I'm going to keep checking Facebook to see if anyone's left a comment. So if you do, you're probably not watching this yet because, oh, look, someone's here. Hello, whoever you are. Welcome. I'll just give it a couple of minutes so that it alerts everyone. Or maybe I can actually alert everyone. So at everyone. See if this works. Hi, Lauren. So Mercury's retrograde at the moment. Oh, it's just started tipping down with rain. Mercury's retrograde at the moment, and Mercury retrograde has kind of a bad reputation for making things go a little bit sideways. So I thought now was a really good time to talk about what Mercury looks like in a full cycle, because the retrograde part is just part of a 4-month synodic cycle between Mercury and the Sun. And I think when we understand the full cycle, we can kind of see ways to work with it in a similar way that I think most of us are familiar with working with moon cycles. So I'm just going to talk about what that might look like for you and how you could do that. So first, let's talk about where we are right now in the cycle. So if you think about the solar system, you've obviously got the Sun in the middle, and then we're like 3 planets out, and Mercury is next to the Sun. And when we look at astrology, we're not looking at it with the Sun in the center. We're looking at it with the Earth in the center. So when we're looking at this Mercury cycle, we're seeing Mercury go around the Sun. And if you think about it, in this cycle, there's going to be 2 times that it lines up with the Sun. And the first one is when Mercury is closest to us and the Sun is furthest away. And then the second one is going to be when Mercury makes it round to the back of the Sun. And so then we'll have the Sun and Mercury aligning from our point of view again. So these both have quite different energies, but they're both called a Mercury cazimi. And in each one, we look at Mercury as being like hidden in the heart of the Sun, because the Sun is too bright. When planets get too close to it, we can't see them because it's daytime and planets tend to look like stars at night. So you kind of need them to be far enough away from the Sun that you can see them while the sky is still dark. So usually, definitely for Mercury and Venus, because I work a lot with Venus. So when they get within 10 degrees of the Sun, they're too close to the Sun that you can't see them. They're almost rising at the same time as the Sun. When they get further than 10 degrees away from the Sun, then you can catch a glimpse of them in either the morning or the evening. And Mercury and Venus both travel close to the Sun. So I think the furthest that Mercury gets away from the Sun is 28 degrees. So it's not going to be more than 1 sign ahead or behind or the same sign as the Sun. So in your chart, your Mercury is going to be pretty close to your Sun, just because of the way they line up. And then Venus isn't maybe 2 signs away, but still pretty close, because if you think about the way that we're looking, they're going to be within this space of the Sun, because that's where we're watching their orbits happen. I don't know if this is helpful. You probably can't really see. I'm just going to wave my arms around anyway. So when we think about this Mercury retrograde piece, we're basically, when we're watching Mercury, it's at the closest point to us in its journey. And it looks like it's not moving because of the way that we're that we're moving as well along with it. And so it looks like it's going backwards and crossing paths with the sun, so that it can do this kind of dance where it does this morning star phase, evening star phase, and then in between we have a retrograde and like an invisible phase when it's on the other side of the sun at its superior conjunction, and this will be its inferior conjunction. So as it's close to us, we're really feeling this mercurial energy. And if we think about it in the same way as like her moon cycle, where Mercury is invisible at the moment, this is like the new moon phase of the cycle. And when it actually joins with the sun, that's going to be the start of a new cycle. That's going to be like actually the moment of the new moon. So when we think about working with moon cycles, this dark moon piece before it meets the sun, this is like a time of contemplation and reflection and healing and going inwards, doing inner work. And that's really the way that we talk about Mercury retrograde, right? Mercury has this kind of fast-paced mental energy around it. And then when it goes retrograde, we slow down. We're more mindful, we're more careful. If we are not more careful, then quite often what we'll find is that we get things wrong, that we're like sending out emails with typos, that none of our technology is working, that all of our transport is being delayed, and that we cannot get anywhere on time anymore. And it's just as a result of this, like forcing us to slow down, like forcing you not to go at full speed. Because I think we do live lives where we're kind of like, you know, at maximum a lot of the time. We're just trying to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and not really giving ourselves space. And our minds really need that. They really do. That space of just letting it all go, of trying to create stillness. I find it's a really important part of my own practice. My Mercury is in Aries. So my brain is kind of like full speed all of the time, all of the thoughts, all of the time. I often talk to my husband about it. He has Mercury in Capricorn, and he'll quite often like be able to sit, and I'll ask him what he's thinking about, and he'll be like, oh, nothing. But if someone asks me what I'm thinking about, I mean, probably 10 things at the same time, all of the time. I don't really understand how you could just like not be thinking about anything. It's really just blows my mind every time. And so I think this idea of us spending time just not focused on everything, not processing so much information, because we have so much information coming at us all of the time, it's really important to take that time to slow down and to let our brain just be, just connect to something bigger than ourselves, or even detach from something bigger than ourselves. Just that space in between things is really, really important. And I think that's something that collectively we're noticing in a big way, like even outside of the spiritual community, the emphasis on meditation and mindfulness and just really slowing down. There's a lot of people moving towards this idea of cyclical living, of like having a 4-day work week, of just finding ways to slow things down because it's just too much. Like we can see that people can't sustain that for their entire working life. We can see that people can't sustain that even for like years on a row, because we're having this just massive rise in mental health situations. It's a big mental health crisis. People just, you can't function at that level without taking a break. And so this Mercury retrograde piece gives us that break, gives us that time to slow down, to reflect, to heal, to take stock of where we're at, and to give our minds a chance to reset. And this Mercury Cazimi moment is the moment of reset. It's a moment of mental clarity. The sun shines brightly onto Mercury. It's right in the heart of the sun, and the sun represents our like will, our purpose, our focus, the thing that is most illuminated. And so when the sun and Mercury align, we get this clarity of purpose, this unity of like our will and our mind, this connection between our closest star and our mental energy. So let me just check when that's happening, because I'm struggling to hold dates in my head. You would think it was Mercury retrograde, right? So the sun is conjunct Mercury on the 23rd. I think something's really magical about this as well, because the sun and Mercury are kind of crossing paths at 0 degrees of Libra. So it's the same day that the sun moves forwards into Libra and Mercury retrograde moves backwards into Virgo. And they're crossing paths at that 0 degree point. But what's going to happen a month later, like 22nd of October, is we're going to see a similar thing happen where Venus is like at the far side of the sun, so not retrograde, but Venus is slowing down and no, sorry. My brain is just like gone, wait, what's happening? Venus is speeding up. Venus is around the back of the sun. Venus is speeding up and it's going to overtake the sun. And so we have this Venus cazimi moment, which is that moment of unity between our heart and our willpower. The Venus Sun cazimi is happening at 29 degrees of Libra. So this Libra sun season, the time that it takes the sun to pass through Libra, is kind of bookmarked by, at the beginning, this Mercury cazimi, this alignment of our mind and our will. And then at the end, this Venus cazimi, that is an alignment of our heart and our will. And I think that's really beautiful. It shows this kind of journey through Libra, where we are moving from this mental energy to this heart-centered energy. And Libra is ruled by Venus. And I think that it has this really, a really beautiful story about how we can get really in our heads, can't we, about creating harmony, about creating aesthetic beauty, about making things more perfect, making things more nice for people. But ultimately, what creates that Libran energy of connection and harmony and love and beauty is the heart-centered piece. It is the Venus-centered piece. It's that feminine receptivity. And so moving into that, and particularly because we're starting Libra season with a new moon as well. The new moon in Libra is at 3 degrees, I think, maybe 2 degrees. So just a couple of days after this Mercury cazimi, and that's going to be opposite Jupiter in Aries. So really thinking about this polarity of like individuation and connection. Aries has a theme of like your identity and who you are as a person, and creating this unique identity that is very, very you. And Libra has this connectedness, this relational energy of creating community or creating friendships, creating partnerships that are very much about connection, that are about creating harmony rather than individuating. And there's definitely a balance to be found between the two of those. And so that's going to be a real theme of the new moon as it's opposing Jupiter in Aries. I say that? Jupiter's in Aries, the new moon's in Libra, and these two are just going to be balancing each other. Like, how can you be the most yourself within your relationships? How can you maintain your individual identity, as well as creating this harmonious relationship energy as well? Yeah, and then I didn't really have a plan for this live, so I'm just kind of riffing on this stuff. So I'm really focusing on this retrograde energy. We have this this Mercury cazimi is a unity of will and mind. And then Mercury continues to be retrograde, like passes the sun, and then it's moving into Virgo. And so this transition as well from an air sign to an earth sign really creates this atmosphere of being able to take our thoughts and manifest them into the physical. So air signs are connected to our thoughts and our mental energy, and earth signs are very like physical, tangible. What can I touch? What can I taste? What can I build? And particularly with Virgo, what can I organize? What can I heal? What can I plant? And so moving from this mental energy into this really healing earthy energy, we'll have a chance to take our thoughts and our ideas, particularly from that Mercury cazimi moment, and manifest them into reality. Whilst we're still going retrograde, we'll go into Virgo and then go forwards again. And then when we've got that forwards motion, Mercury is going to be behind the sun. So if you think about this in terms of what you'll be able to see, I mean, obviously nothing until Mercury is 10 degrees away from the sun. Like I said before, if Mercury is too close, you won't be able to see anything. The sun will just block it out completely. We call it Mercury being combust, where it's just too close to the sun. You can't see it. It doesn't promote mental clarity. It's just too close. And so when Mercury is 10 degrees away from the sun, we will see it rising. My brain is working extra hard at the moment. You can probably see. So when Mercury has passed the sun's going to rise, and then in the morning you'll see Mercury just before sunrise. Just before sunrise in the morning, you'll be able to see Mercury as a morning star. And not for a huge amount of time, because like I said, Mercury doesn't move that far away from the sun. And then there'll be another cazimi as Mercury moves around the back of the sun, and it's hidden while it's like closer than 10 degrees to the sun. So that period as well, and then it will come back around. So if we think about this in terms of like what that could mean in relation to a moon cycle, is when Mercury is behind the sun, this is like a full moon phase. This is a time for releasing. So where this new moon Mercury is like, it's very much still in the dark moon energy of like healing and reflecting and that kind of energy. And then as it moves, as it comes out of retrograde, it'll be like in the like new state of creating new mental energy, a new mental cycle, a new cycle for our minds. And then when it's behind the sun, it's like a full moon phase. So it's releasing, it's kind of seeing the fruition of what happened at that other Mercury cazimi, at the retrograde Mercury cazimi. We'll see in its superior conjunction, we'll see it coming back round to those themes. It's a good time to reflect on them and to see what has happened. And then again, at this full moon phase, you'll also see this unity of our will and our mind. And it's a really great time to get mental clarity. Definitely a time to have a notebook with you, or like have your phone ready to record any messages that come through. I don't think anyone's put any questions in the chat. So and so if you follow this cycle, you'll be able to work with Mercury as like a 4-month cycle that follows the vague themes of a moon cycle. But the moon obviously affects our emotions, whereas Mercury is affecting our mental energy. So in terms of when we'll have the most mental energy, the most mental clarity, it's going to be when Mercury is visible, for sure. And then when Mercury is at that full moon cazimi moment with the sun. And also, if you look at Mercury in your chart, you'll be able to see where Mercury is falling on this cycle, for the most part. Maybe not exactly, unless you're like looking at the full cycle around about the time you were born. Definitely if you have Mercury retrograde though, retrogrades can be a really great time for you. I sometimes read for people with Mercury retrograde in their chart, and they talk about how actually their technology functions much better during Mercury retrograde, and they find it much easier to communicate with people. Because often if you've got Mercury retrograde in your chart, you're used to being misunderstood, and you're used to people not fully getting what you say. Your mind works slightly differently, and so it can be hard to communicate with people. I feel like I've said that 3 times in a row. But yeah, that's what it feels like if you've got Mercury retrograde. So when Mercury is retrograde in the sky, your energies are aligning, and this can be a really great time for you to like just be in flow with that mental energy. It's really gonna complement your blueprint, the imprint of like your birth in your chart. And I guess this can also work like if your progressed Mercury is retrograde as well, you might feel more in flow during this time. Yeah, I feel like that's what I wanted to say about Mercury cycles. If anyone, I don't think anyone's watching now, but if anyone has any questions, do drop me a comment. If you would like to talk about this some more, let me know. Drop a hashtag replay if you've watched this. I would love to know. And I'm going to take a moment to talk about what I have coming up. So feel free to move on if this isn't for you. I'm just going to go for a shameless plug here. Whilst no one is watching. Secret plug. So on the 29th of September, as Venus moves into Libra, Venus rules Libra, and so this is a really beautiful placement for her. I'm going to start the Venus rituals again. I run this 3 times a year, once when Venus enters Pisces, the sign of her exaltation, and then in Taurus and in Libra, which are her home signs. And it's a really beautiful course of devotional rituals and just a really beautiful slow energy of connecting with Venus together, and entering into this really feminine energy of connection, of receptivity, of understanding yourself and your own feminine energy, understanding your desires and your relationship patterns, and some really deep and profound and transformational work, which if you've ever done devotional rituals before, you will have some idea of how this looks and how this works. And there's plenty of time to process within the group. This time I'm just going to do a group on Facebook. Last time I tried to do Telegram as well, and it just felt a little bit disjointed and messy, and I'm like double posting things. So we're just going to center it on the Facebook group, and there'll be resources that are released every week. We're going to start the journey with a circle. So I have a goddess circle to open the container, which is going to happen on the 30th of September. And then each week a new ritual will drop for 5 weeks, and then we will have a closing circle to really integrate all of what we've learned and to do a journey to Venus's star temple and receive a gift from her in exchange for our 5 weeks of devotion. This has definitely been a transformative journey for me to go on, so I'm really excited to share it with you. Yeah, and then after that, I'm going to do a Venus pentagram point workshop, which is just exploring the Venus cycle, really, in a similar way to the way that I've unpacked this Mercury cycle for you. We're going to look at Venus cycles over this synodic cycle, so her meetings with the sun, but also in a larger way, how these play out over 4 years and 8 years, and what kind of imprint that leaves in your own chart, and how that affects you. And yeah, what that could mean for your personality, depending on whether you've got a morning star or an evening star, or like which pentagram point you were born after. So if you're interested in Venus cycles and want to go really deep into that, we're also going to look at Venus moon cycles, the Venus moon synodic cycle, during her visible phase, and how we can use that along with the mythology of Inanna and her journey to the underworld, and then her ascent back to heaven. And so I'm going to retell that myth and talk about how you can work with her as a part of the Venus cycle. She is essentially a more ancient version of Venus, like an older female deity. That Venus is like the Roman borrowing of Inanna. So yes, I'm going to talk about that in my Venus Pentagram Point workshop. And from there, we're going to actually follow this journey. So I will be doing the ascent of Inanna, which is going to be meeting every time that Venus meets the moon, and following the journey of ascent, which essentially at this point, Venus is no longer visible in the morning sky. She's behind the sun. And so she's going to meet the sun and form a star point. And then when she becomes visible again in the evening sky, each of her Venus moon conjunctions creates a Venus gate. And at each of these Venus gates, Inanna's journey takes us through each of the gates to the underworld. And so we're doing the journey back to heaven. And at each of them, she removes an item of clothing, and on her way back to heaven, she'll retrieve those items of clothing. So they relate to each chakra. I'm not explaining this very well, sorry. They relate to each chakra. So each month we're going to have a circle and create space to talk about astrology, and to also talk about how we reclaim our power after this underworld journey that Venus Inanna has been through, how we rebirth back into our power and how we reclaim the pieces that we left behind, and I'm losing my words. It's a gorgeous transformational journey. Join me, you'll love it. So that's my shameless plug. I hope you all have a super awesome, wonderful day. I'm really sorry for everyone who just time zones didn't work out for this. I know it's rough. If there's a particular time that works really well for you, feel free to reach out and let me know. And I will definitely take that into account next time that I do something like this. I was thinking if I did it in the afternoon in UK time, that it would then not be the middle of the night in America, and that would probably be helpful. But maybe a little bit later in the day would have been better. If I went for my evening, it would be, I don't know, after work time for people. Anyway, it's one of those things. You can never get the right time for everyone in this global world, can you? Yeah, this has been lovely. Oh, someone's watching again. Hi, welcome. I'm just wrapping this up. If you have any questions or want to say anything, feel free to drop it in the comments now. Or yeah, this has been fun. I'm gonna wrap it up now. Have a wonderful day, everyone.